together for one mission.
اوكي لحدينا لما نقول انتهينا من الفقره بتاعتنا بتاعت الكلمه من الفقره اللي ناقشناها في الجروب لان احنا عدلناها في الجروب حاليا ناقص فوق حاليا بعد الخدمه طوالي فالخدمه بتاعتنا بتاعت الكلمه من هنا انتهى انا واصل انا قاعد ارحب باخوي فوق كان مرحب باسم الرب يسوع انا صفق له هاي جاي
My brother again, and thank you for the message. It's so powerful. And I like whenever we're talking about leadership, and it makes us to learn a lot as leaders. We are growing to become leaders. We are not growing to become useless people. But thank you because this message is so good for us as youths. We have to be ready anytime to become leaders. So immediately we're going to our video. As we talked last time, we said last time that we're going to watch a video which is one of the key message for us, the youth. The person who's going to talk, he concentrated only for the youth, who is at Kalam Mashabab. He wanted to know why, or is it the right, is it time to leave your church? Last time I tried to talk about it, but some people maybe did not understand what do they mean by leaving the church. And then it also advised the leaders of the church. When your youths leave the church, what do you do to bring them back? So I'm not going to talk about more about it, but we're going to watch the video, and I believe we're going to be blessed. There is no more questions today. We're just watching and to learn from what we're going to watch. I wish everyone have a notes down what we're going to hear.
Recently, I put a post out on my Instagram and on my YouTube channel asking the question, why are so many millennials leaving the church? And some of the responses that I got were very, very interesting. According to a recent poll, nearly 75% of baby boomers consider themselves Christians, but only around 50% of millennials would claim to be Christian. Roughly 2/3 of all millennials attend church only a few times a year or less. 4 out of 10 millennials say they seldom, if ever, go. So the question we have to ask ourselves is why? Why are so many millennials leaving the church? But the bigger question that I want to address in this video is what can we do as a church to hopefully win them back? So what I want to do is, first and foremost, I want to talk directly to the millennial. But even if you're not a millennial and maybe you've just left the church in general, I want to talk to you because there are some specific claims that many millennials make to say, okay, this is why I don't want to go to church anymore. These are my reasons. And some of them were in the comment section of that post. And what I want to do is I want to analyze them and I want to see if each of these claims are valid claims or not. But then towards the end of this video, I want to switch gears and then I want to talk to the church. I want to talk to the church leaders and I want to explore what are some things that we can do as a church to hopefully win and bring back more millennials so that we can save more in this generation. Okay, so the first claim that many millennials will say about the church in terms of why they don't go is that the church is intolerant, or another word they may use is church people are judgmental. According to the Pew Research Center, 57% of all millennials believe that the church is too judgmental as compared to only 37% of baby boomers. So 2 things are happening here. The first thing is that you may feel like the church is too judgmental or intolerant because the church is promoting and preaching things that are going against what you want to do with your life, and you don't like how that feels. You don't like the church telling you that you can't shack up, or that you can't have sex before marriage, or that you can't smoke weed, or you can't do all these different types of things. And so as a result, your natural knee-jerk reaction is to say, well, the church is intolerant. You don't like the fact that the church is saying that same-sex marriages are a sin and all these things. And so because you might be struggling with some of these things, you are naturally saying that the church is intolerant and the church is judgmental. So that's the first thing that might be happening is because you're looking at yourself and you're saying, hey, the church is now infringing upon my freedom to do what I want to do, and I don't want to feel guilty about it. But the second thing that you may say about the church is that it's intolerant because of how it views other people. You may say, okay, well, hey, the church says that these people can't live an alternative lifestyle or whatever. So here's the thing you have to be careful about, Mr. or Miss Millennial, is the fact that you can't blame the church for simply promoting or presenting, if you will, a biblical approach to what's going on in the world. The church is merely a conduit between God and man. The church merely presents, or is a mailman, if you will, where they're presenting what God has already spoken. So you can't get mad at the church. If you want to say somebody's intolerant or judgmental, you need to point the finger at God, because God is the one who said these things are not good and these things are. So is this a valid claim that the church is intolerant? I would say that's probably not valid. The second major claim against the church is that the church is not authentic. And what I believe they're saying here is that, you know what? Hey, I would just love to see some people in the church that are really real and really vulnerable and transparent with really what's going on in their life, because they walk around as if they have these perfect lives, these perfect marriages, and these perfect children, but underneath the surface, their lives are not really that. And so a lot of millennials are saying, hey, we would love to see church members or leaders share a little bit more about their real struggles and what's really going on in their life, because we can't relate to perfect people. Here's a good clip from some of the millennials that are talking about just this.
And I love that you said that statistic, and this has been the narrative for a while, you know, and I remember somebody asking me, like, why the same question? 7 out of 10 are leaving. Why is that? It's like, yo, we're leaving the church. We're not leaving God, and we're not leaving our faith.
You better preach that. Come on.
And so
Yeah.
what I think is a reason for that, which you segued into perfectly, is just a lack of vulnerability and transparency to those that we're submitted under authority to, and to those that are leading us. So we don't know how to go through things because we never see our pastors and leaders be vulnerable enough and put themselves in a position to where it's like, no, this is where I bleed. Confident enough that we're praying for them and that we're learning from them, not going and talking about them and gossiping about them, being like, oh, did you know Pastor so-and-so's doing whatever? But it's like there's a certain level of vulnerability that's not there, that doesn't exist, and it's making it really hard for us to find genuine
connection.
Praise God.
Bam.
So is this a valid reason for why millennials may not want to be in church? I would probably say, yeah, that's pretty valid, because a lot of church people try to front and act like they have everything going on. But the third reason why I believe that many millennials are not wanting to go to church, and many of them have confirmed this, is that they just believe that the church is filled with hypocritical people. People that say one thing and do something else. Now, what I will say to a millennial on this one is that this, I believe, comes from an unrealistic expectation about what church people are supposed to be about. If you go to church and you're expecting everybody there to have it all together, or to be perfect, or to not be hypocritical, any more than the people at your job or anywhere else that you go in the world, I think you're setting yourself up for an unrealistic expectation, so that now when you peel back the layers of these people's lives and you see that they're struggling with different things, then now you're like, okay, well, I don't want to be a part of this because these people are hypocritical. What's interesting is that you don't quit your job if your job is filled with hypocritical people. You don't quit your fraternity or your sorority or your whatever group that you're in because they are also filled with hypocritical people. So is this a valid reason to not go to church because the church is filled with hypocritical people? No, I don't believe it is, because if they are hypocritical, that's where they need to be anyway. Now, another claim that millennials may make as it relates to why they don't want to go to church, or what's wrong with the church today, is that the church is just not relevant to their daily lives. Now, while some aspects of church should be relevant, what we have to be careful about here is that we need to understand that the Bible is not a self-help book, right? And so whenever the preachers may preach from something like poetry, or a genre like prophecy, or narratives, or history, or proverbs, or all these different types of things, listen, should the preachers just not preach from any of these parts of the Bible because, after all, prophecy is not relevant, or some of the Old Testament history books are not relevant to where you are? The Bible is not a self-help book, right? So you have to understand that The whole purpose of the church is not to just make everything and every sermon relevant to your life. It's to give you what they know you need in order to grow spiritually, even though it may not be completely relevant to your life. So is this claim valid? I guess you could say it's valid only from the perspective that I don't think that the church or the Bible was intended to always be perfectly relevant to your life. Now, the next claim that many millennials will make is that the church is not concerned with culture. They are detached from culture, because one of the things that many millennials will say is that, they want to see change going on in the culture. They want to see our society change. They're proponents of like racial equality and social justice and some of these other things that are going on in the world. And they look at the church and they're like, you guys are preaching sermons from Zechariah and Malachi or whatever, and the world is going in this direction, and you are the church and you don't even care. So is this a valid claim? Well, let me just first of all say this, that the church's ultimate overall mission is to impact people's lives eternally and not just temporarily on this earth. So the main focus, the main priority of the church is not to accomplish some sort of social justice that's going on in the world. It's to make sure that people's eternal lives and their eternal state, right, is going to be with the Father. So we need to be careful about expecting the church to do something or be something that even God may not have ever intended them to be. Now, I have a whole other video where I talk about whether or not the church should be involved in issues of justice. I'll put a card up there on the screen, and I'll put it in the link in the description below. And then the last claim that many millennials will make is that, you know what? The church is not really adding any major value to my life. Like, it's not really beneficial in any way. I mean, at the end of the day, I can still have a thriving career. I can still have a great marriage. I can still raise great kids. I can still, I can still live a very moral life. And so at the end of the day, like, why do I even need to go to church in order to do any of these things? And the reality is that that's a valid claim. You don't, right? So you don't need to go to church for any of these things. But going to church, the bride of Christ, is what helps you grow closer to God. Yes, you can have a moral life without God, but none of those things are going to get you closer to God. So now we've addressed whether these claims from millennials are valid or not. So now I want to switch gears and I want to talk to the church. What is it that we can do as church leaders to hopefully win this millennial generation back? And now the first thing that I would say is that we as a church need to be more inclusive. And what I mean here is that far too often you have too many churches that are making all of these major decisions about what is happening in the church, and they seldom, if ever, include other younger millennials in those decisions. And so as a result, many millennials don't feel like the church is for them. They don't feel like that it's really, none of the programs are really relating to where they are in their life. They don't feel like they have a say. They don't feel like they have any sort of input in terms of what the church is doing. And so maybe if we reached out to millennials and say, hey, would you come to this meeting? Would you help us get better? Would you help us build this ministry? Then maybe they will feel more included and more inclusive, and they may actually just come up with some ideas that will actually help your church that very well may be outdated reach a generation of people that are quite lost. Number two, we got to let go of some of our traditions, right? The way that this generation receives the word of God and understands things very well may be different than what's going on in your church. Right? So they may receive from somebody who wears skinny jeans, right? They may receive from somebody who's up on stage rapping or doing spoken word. That's how this generation understands and receives truth. It might be different than maybe what you're used to growing up. But if you want to reach this next generation, you got to speak their language. You got to get into their world. You got to figure out what it is that's working. What are they attracted to? What do they like? Who are the people that are impacting their lives the most? And how can we adjust what we're doing, let go of some of our traditions so that we can reach this generation? Number three, focus more on social issues. And notice I didn't say focus only on social issues, but focus more on social issues. And what do I mean here? I said this earlier, many millennials, many people from this younger generation, they are passionate about things that are going on in our society that they believe are wrong. Whether they're white, whether they're black, doesn't matter what color they are. They are passionate about that. So why not create forums in your church where younger people can come together and have discussions about these things? And then you as a church leader come up with ideas and strategies for how you might be able to be a force within your community to actually make some change. And in that way, you might actually see some millennials that want to get on board and collaborate and work with you so that they can actually feel like they're part of the solution rather than just complaining about the problem. Number 4 is community. Many of the responses that I got in my post were the fact that many millennials just don't feel any sense of community when they go to church. They go there and they don't really see other people that are like them, or there's no real forums or groups or anything like that for them to actually meet other people. We've got marriage ministries, we've got children's ministries, we've got youth ministries, we've got worship ministry, we got all these other ministries, but there's like that 21 through 35-year-old young adult age range where, quite frankly, a lot of times that's just the forgotten group. Right? And so why not create community in your church that allows people to come? And it may not just be that they come to study the Bible or anything like that. It just might be some fellowship opportunities or some things that they can go out and do some things together, or maybe do some community service together. But whatever it is, create a community or create opportunities for younger people to come together so they can meet other people and have community and feel like they have a sense of belonging at your church. Number 5, and this is a huge one, start dealing with the tough questions. I cannot tell you how many people come to me on my channel and say, hey, Brother Allen, thank you so much for dealing with the questions that we have, because when we go to our church, we're just told to just accept it by faith, or we're just told, hey, you know what, I'm not sure the answer to that, but you know what, just believe it's true, or whatever, or we don't talk about that here, or that's taboo, or maybe they don't hear sermons about things that they are dealing with. Right? This generation is dealing with same-sex attraction. They're dealing with lust. They're dealing with having inappropriate websites on their phone and things like that they can get to. They're dealing with that. They're dealing with gender issues. They're dealing with being confused about their identity and all this stuff. And sadly, at the church, very few churches are actually dealing with that. Now, I'm not saying that every sermon has to be about that, but what I am saying is, once again, is there some sort of forum? Is there some sort of outlet? Are there any sort of activities? Are there any sort of services that you may have that are specifically dedicated to answering the tough questions that this generation has? I believe if you start to implement some of those things, you'll start to see an influx of younger people coming back to your church because they want answers to difficult questions. And then the last thing that I'll say is this issue of substance. This one surprised me, but many millennials said that they feel like the sermons are watered down. They feel like one person said that it felt more like, what did they say? They said they felt it more like a rock concert and a stand-up comedy, right? That's what they said. And so it's interesting that the very thing that we think is going to attract more people, which is to kind of water the word of God down and put a whole bunch of jokes and stuff in our sermon, is actually the very thing that is repelling an entire generation, because they want to be challenged. They want to hear the truth. They want answers to life's most difficult questions. So I would encourage us to make sure that our sermons and everything that we do is with substance. So once again, hopefully you got a lot from this video, because I wanted to talk directly to the millennials, and I also wanted to talk to the church leaders as well. So I would love to hear your thoughts. Are you a millennial? Are you one that's more jaded towards church, or are you going to church? Are you actively involved in church? Are you a church leader? What are some other ideas that you can have that will hopefully bring more people back to the church?
So, according to what you've heard, maybe this millennium having this kind of millennium Shabbat. So, bad, very killer. What did you understand as a youth from that message?
Okay. It has a point about leadership, because when it comes to like any time in church, right? People be like, when someone asks question, be like, you just read book, meditate, find, they give you, they will not give you a direct answer.
They don't guide you.
Yeah, in a real way, so that you will be like, ah, if I just go there, they will just tell me read the book. They will not tell anything. And also about the society. When it comes to society, nowadays church don't focus more on society.
Culture.
Yeah, focus only on the spiritual life and something like that. To attract the spiritual and the life that we have outside life, like outward man, we need to let them work together.
Okay. So when the church is taking the culture out of the church, like everything that is in the culture, the church is separating it from the church. You see, most of the youth, if they mention something like musicians, actors. Most of the youth, they like those people. Like last time we did something here, we called our brother Martin Zico. Martin Zico, the comedian, the South Sudanese comedian. We talked to him last time on video. Most of the youths, they like this guy. But when we are bringing him in the church, most of the leaders, they say like, now, why are you bringing someone, a comedian, to the youths? What is the effect that you're going to bring? This guy has nothing to do with church, but this is very important because when they see such kind of person, he's in the church talking to the youth, people who follow him, youths who follow him, they will also be part of the church because of that guy. The same thing in the church, for you to bring the youths into the church, you have to use a strategy. The strategy is what? Make use of what they like most. Concerts, praise and worship days, bring them, let them have space, let them have freedom of worship. You see like the talents will come out, those who were hiding their talents will come out and then show their talents, and it will bring all other people who are outside to come to the church because of that. So that is what we say. Those are the two things that he said. Let me make things clear. The guy is not encouraging people to come to church because of someone. He's saying, guys who are outside, they don't know God. How can the church bring them to God? And those who are in the church already, is it time for them to leave? He's asking a question. If you follow the question, he's telling those guys, don't leave because it's not the time to leave the church. You understand me? Jamanshi confusion. He's advising the youths, this is not the right time for you to leave the church. Because this time, this generation is so dangerous. If you left the church, you will be in trouble. That is if I can go deeper from what he's saying. So you cannot get out. But in another question, when he was advising the leaders, he said, how can we do, or what can we do to bring those youths who are outside, who left the church, who were in the church, they left the church, how can we bring them back? And how can we bring those who they did not God yet, how can we bring them back? That's why I went and gave an example of celebrities. Jana Ashantena di Jana Ejik. That's why we hear another person we hear them. Ashanestri Jana, we give halawa. He had the able to halawa. Namashuk halawa, namashuk biscuit. He will come, or she will come. Then that when it will be taken. But if you just tell the child, come now, will he come? He will not come. Until he sees something that it will push him to you. That is the same thing in the spirit or in the church. For you to win a soul, especially Shabbat, I'm not going to Baginas and Arfin Kitab. I'm going to tell in the Shabbat, at least I'm Arfin Kenisa, Arfin Rabbi. For you to bring them to the church, you have to use a strategy. Bring them something that they like most. We don't want to bring them, who is famous in the church here? Okay, let me say, for example, Philemon. Many people, they like Philemon songs. Philemon is coming to Kampala, he has a concert on the 8th and on the 9th, together with the youths, organized praise and worship by the youth office. People will come to the church thinking they are coming to see Philemon. You understand? But when they come to church, what Philemon will be singing is not going to be Philemon now. It's going to be the Spirit of God passing the message to those people. That's why you see people saying, I received Christ in one of the praise and worship days. Was it because of the singer? No. He came to see the singer. But when he reached there, God has transferred things to him or her through that singer. So here is, I was coming because of Philemon, but I've met God through Philemon. You understand me? But if we say, you guys come to praise and worship, the church is organizing the praise and worship, you guys come. No one will have a question or will have a full stop to come. Like, okay, I'm coming. They'll ask questions. Praise and worship there. Whom are the people going to sing? Nazmino. You understand? But when they see someone who is well known, they will come, and then they are coming, it will be the transformation of their life. That's what I was meaning. So the question here was, is it time for giving the church? That was going to be used. I've taken in an voice. Now, Shama Nikrobara, who Kalam Kalamda Fitness, the Shabbat or the leader of the Kenisa. The Shabbat, he was advising them, is not the right time for you to lead the church now. But the leaders was telling them, how can we bring those people who went out of the church back to the church? I think that's what I wanted to say about this.
So when you come to the street, like any nigga dressing like on the street or any guy telling like come to him with the Bible, when he's standing in front of you, you will just walk away. You'll be like, man, I don't believe these things. Because if I believe in something that I don't see, many questions will be like, tell me what's greater than God and what's than the devil. They'll be like, this is a mind game. See, how can I believe in something that I don't see? But if you make someone to understand how the thing goes, how the things work, just without angering your Bible, you will understand it slowly, and come to the church. Because many years I was in the church, then I left the church, in the streets for 2 years, and I come back to the church. I didn't come here because I don't understand anything, but I know what street needs and what the church needs. You cannot, okay, you cannot just be like, everyone to be like you, or everyone to be like you. They don't be like that. It doesn't work. So you have to let them understand without the Bible in your hand. Next time you're pregnant with the Bible, like advertisement. You know what I mean? So when it comes to musicians, sometimes people don't come to those artists or celebrities. Church hate them. Church hate them because of their words, their singing music, or the anything that they have. People hate them. So when people hate them, their fans also will hate church. You know, you have to get closer to your enemy. Turn your enemy into your friend or your competitor into your friend. But people try to consider them as the devils, as the evils, but not like that because they just don't understand and they don't believe. You know, it be like this is a mind game.
Thank you so much. There's a name of it for it. You see, like for me now, I'm Shulu, okay? I've been designed from my childhood as Shulu people. So for me to enter into that culture, I need to go with their culture. And this is what you are trying to say. And this is the method that Jesus used. When Jesus was on earth, he sat with sinners. Even one day he was called a friend of what? Or a sinners. Because the other people, they were seeing themselves, they are holy and all these things. In our time, and you have seen that, things have changed. We had one of our friends, brother, Daniel, who was here. You see the way he dressed, that guy is unique, not so. It's like you, like this. So this is another way how to attract people. Okay? So I understand your point. And then, when you come to the things of, he gave the example of Philemon. It's very true. I have seen that with Pastor Top. I don't know, Pastor Kanas Gabi in Juba. This guy is open-minded. Who got the gymnast, okay? The gymnast them are called the Kalan Publisher. Jam Erigotu, Jam Monza, Fikalisa Gao, Jam Nasumuno, these figures. Okay? So this is another way in a belief Shabab cave. So how do you feel the Hebrew? They are looking for love. Something is missing. Then they will get it down there. Okay? God has given me a privilege. Like I do serve, especially down there. You go to shop, they are burdened with that. So when you go there, they are shocked. Like woman can so it is all about love. You love them, and yeah. I know Finas in Kalam, so you guys let us come. Into Kumasi. I know it, like my brother here. So let us us open our minds so that we bring the other young people who are ourselves. Okay?
One thing is, the guy is saying, is it time to leave the church? It's like I'm calling someone, please don't leave the church because it's not the right time. If you left, you're going to get lost. Number two is, how can I bring someone who already left to the church? This is the question that you have to understand. And when you are talking, make sure that you touch these 2 points. We cannot bring worldly people to the church for sure. It's impossible. You cannot bring chameleon, you cannot bring who in the church to come and bring other people. No. We bring figures of people who are servants of God. It might be pastors, it might be singers, it can be prophets, people who are serving God, people outside there. Finas Tani Shabab Marvin Kenisa, but they like prophets, they love prophets. They love their prophets. They have some pastors that they love. They have some singers that they love. Those are the people that we are facing or we're seeing to bring in the church so that other people can follow. You understand? We're not bringing worldly singers, worldly people to come to the church. That's what we have to understand. So, the first one is, those people who are trying to leave the church, we're not advising them to leave the church because right now, if you left the church, that's what I used to tell many people. Kampala, everywhere. I want to leave this church because I want to go and see God's miracle in my life. Believe me, even in your room, God can do miracles to you. You don't have to go to a church where people are thousands, then you see miracle there. Even in your room, you yourself and your wall, 4 corners, God will show miracles. So the guy is saying, it's not the right time for you to leave the church because danger is outside there. When you go out, you face danger and it's going to be hard for you to get back to where you were. Though it can be physically easy for you to get back to where you were before, but spiritually, you are in danger. Because the person that you went to, the person who prayed for you, you don't know what he kept inside your life. You understand? Your life is going to be in danger, but physically we're going to see someone is coming. Kazam is there coming. But I know that Kazam was in the church before. He left the church because he wanted to go and look for miracles. He came back to the church because he did not get what he wanted. But what did he came back to the church with? That is spiritual. That's why we're advising you. It's not the right time for you to leave the church now. Any other person?
Ana ma biri ya wani style kijani the congregation where I don't know the shabab. Lakini ana bonus kijani the leadership because when the video was playing, the guy did not touch only the congregation. He also spoke about leaders. What can they do to sort such a problem? Because and what I'm saying, another Senja want to emphasize the leaders hakana tukenise ولم يكونوا بال شديد لشباب ولم يكونوا بال شديد للمؤمنين. لأنه we shall be very wrong to assume that everything is alright. We assume they are going to read their Bible and they are going to grow. What I'm trying to say, the meta convention law, they are still struggling. They are still struggling with their thoughts. They are still struggling with the world they were in. Because I like the example of Parr. The Bible says a monophone when you're feeding Arabia, that's what they see. Young can obviously Arabia nation, we do as well. So now they have lisa maraba le marhala bagre feed yani spirit don't zaman. Okay? So another shaja binu idara kirefuni barabajat khas the congregation barabajat khas the shabab to enrich them and to empower them. They are nine even though barabajat community outreach and we need to integrate our tradition together with their tradition in a more possible way. They are even good now. Najib Muranimin who have encountered Christ to communicate and to speak to them through their language so that they can get a mutual understanding. Amen? Yeah. So I'm going to say because I'm a member in a church and I've seen and I've interacted, and even me personally, when I came to church, I also have the same things. So many times I've been contemplating. So many times I got nasare the decision. So many times I question truth because sometimes need for belonging, along mahabba, you don't get it. What they preach to you outside when you come to church, you don't get it. You don't get the need for belonging. Because there is no community whereby you see a face and you be like, okay, I'm in the right place. Amen. So we need to have those faces. We need to give them majal, we need to give them ground. So that when they're in the church, they'll be like, yeah, I have David, I have Clemento, I have Levi, I have Paul, I have Maggie. I can interact with them and I can share with them positively. Shukran.
احنا شفنا في قصه بتاع يسوع انه بعد يسوع بدا في الخدمه بتاعته هو كان قاعد يشيل معاه مجموعه حتى قالوا في المعبد بتاع الفريسيين معبد بتاع اليهود اقصد كان في ناس قاعد تطلع من كنايس قاعد تمشي معهم خلوا شركه بتاعتهم كان هم كانوا شافوا حاجه في يسوع ما كان بس عشان انه احنا نطلع قال نمشي نشوف ميركل حتى المؤمنين بتاعتنا هنا ما مجرد بس الناس اللي قاموا فاتوا في حاجه هم شافوه هناك لو لاحظت هنا انا بسال هسه الناس زي هنا هم طلعوا من الكنائس بتاعتهم ده هل هم كانوا ما ملتزمين ولا هم كانوا برامجهم شنو ولا يسوع ولا بس حاجه جديد زي الحاجه حاصل معجزه والناس جارها ممكن كانوا هم يقولوا طب ليه هم طلعوا ورا يسوع الحاجه اللي حاصل كان شنو؟ لانه لو جينا هسه في ارض الواقع ده نفس الحاجه اللي حاصل الناس بيقول الناس جاريه للكنائس ميراكل وكده في نفس الوقت ده نفس الحاجه اللي حصل مع يسوع فاحنا ماشيين باكزامبل بتاع البايبل احنا بنتبع البايبل انه في ناس طلعت من كنائس عديد انه في عديد لما في قعدات قال يقول انه يسوع ده شال ناسنا انه ده الناس بتاعتنا المفروض نيجي نعمل معاهم كل شيء ونفس الحاجه اللي حاصله انه الناس دي شالوا فاتوا المؤمنين بتاعتنا في كنائس وانتم مشيتوا وده احنا هسه هنا السؤال بتاعتي المؤمنين بتاعتنا اللي ماشيين ده اللي ماشيين يجيبوا ميراكل ده هل هم غدانين يمشوا هناك ولا السبب مننا نحن هنا ذاته احنا ما قاعدين نقدم لهم عذاب؟
يا بعد مرة انت بتتابع زول عندك ايمان فيك انا متابع زول ده يسوع انا بقول لك حتى تلاميذ يسوع المسيح ما كان تبغى عشان هو يسوع تبغى يسوع المسيح عشان المعجزات اللي كان يعمل and some of them thought when Jesus become the kings of Israel they will be ministers يسوع يقول ما that this is the awaited king so once he become a king I shall get my position let's follow him because he does miracles this is the guy so Yeshua المسيح كتابورنا ناس because they saw something in him that was an answer to their question because as it can get في كنيسة وكنيسة كان ما قاعد يواجه مشكلة بتاعك ما قاعد يحلوا لك لكن في كنيسة بقاعد يحلوا لك then why would you waste time because المشكلة بيجي ما منك انت المشكلة بيجي من الكنيسة إدارة الكون so يسوع المسيح كان قاعد يبشر بالإنجيل ما جاء بس قاعد يبشر وساكت كان جاء قاعد يعمل معجزات قاعد يشفي المرضى حاجات إنسان قبل كده ما قدر له and for them the Jews before Jesus nobody was able to open an eye there was no miracle like that but when Jesus came miracle became like something simple something just with a blink and an eye it can happen so those people followed Jesus Christ because of what Jesus can do not who Jesus is because even when Jesus asked them who am I they never knew or they were not even able to define who Jesus was only one person was able to define who Jesus was then you find out that these people followed Jesus not because of who Jesus is but because of what Jesus can do that's what I can say thank you
That's how you say that they followed Jesus because of miracle not because of the personality it will link to what we're saying those people who are outside for them to join the church they have to see something that will bring them hope you understand me now yes
أصل الكوين أنا لقيته إنه يسوع كان قادر يسدد الاحتياجات بتاعنا كشركة إحنا كشركة لو ما قادرين نقدر لو ما قاعدين نساعد بعضنا أو نقدر نتكاتف مع بعض إنه ما في داعي ده الجيش اللي أنا فهمت أصلا إنه ما لازم فهمته كجيش إنه الكوين ده اسمه شركة إحنا قاعدين نجي مع بعض مش مجرد جيش لكن شركة إحنا قاعدين نجي مع بعض قاعدين نتفاقم مش بس بنيجي نسال الروحانيات لكن نشارك مشاكلات بتاعتنا بنحكي مع بعض في محل الطريق ده احنا بنقول ده الحاجه اللي انا بنقول هم بعضوا في محل التسديد بتاع الاحتياجات وفي كلام بتاع الكلمه للحياه بتاعتنا
لكن كان هم قرروا انهم يكونوا في الكنيسه معناتهم هم ذاتهم ما فاهمين ديريشن You understand? Because I think in the Bible somewhere say, stay here until I will send the Holy Spirit. Imagine you left and God sent the Holy Spirit, you will find your way. So you have to be patient, wait for God's timing. Don't be in a hurry of going to look for God's timing somewhere else. Wait for God's timing is always the best. Because if you went and look for your own timing, you'll be in trouble. So here is what you can get from what God is saying.
To add on, talk about it was on the first 2 points that the pastor was talking about. Although he did not clearly in depth talked about it, there are things to do with intolerance from personal view, whereby you be like, this church is not tolerant to what you want. That is what you guys be arguing on and on about. If the other church has this, and you find it you yourself that it is what suits you, is what's going to help you grow to another level based on your imagination, right? Because sometimes people go to other places, but they actually don't grow there. You thought you would grow and become a bigger thing there, like a bigger servant, you will serve millions, serve several people, but once you reach there, you are no longer that fruitful, and then you know how things get drifted and twisted all over, and then you find yourself lost. That's why we hear of big men of God that kind of lost track of God along the way. That is when it comes to intolerance, somehow, some way. But intolerance, and then another thing he spoke about was authentic. Like it doesn't look original. Like some of these statements, sometimes we have our pastors here.
It is like they are doing something else and they are preaching something else.
Yeah, one. And also two, when we carry out, because I remember there was a time we had a conference last year, December. And then when we were back there during the time of the discussion, the pastor said that they used to have a conference whereby they would sleep with the women or the ladies on the same place, and they didn't used to have any kind of desire that pops up. For a new believer, or for a new person who is dwelling still in between, might not believe. But someone who has been serving God and knows things might be like, yes, I can affirm to that.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
You know what I'm saying? It's not authentic. You get it? It doesn't sound.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then lastly, what I would like to add on is just a question whereby how can you know that God is calling you now to leave this place to another place? And then what if God tells you to go now to another phase, like to another place, to another church, to leave this church, go to the other church, to now do ministry, to now impact people from there? If He tells you to go, and then people here in your church are not in good terms with it, is it still called God's call? That's what I just.
Okay. I just want to answer your last question. You say how can
you know the time? Like how can you know that God
to leave?
Yeah, to leave. Then how will you know that is God telling you to leave? And when God tells you to leave, and then the church you're serving or ministering from
Against you.
are not they're not only against it, but they are not happy about it.
About your leaving.
Yeah.
Alright, just simple question is, for you to know that it's the right time for you to leave, the church has to not be against your plan or against your leaving. That is first of all showing that it's your time. And then the second thing is, where you're going, because God, when He gives you vision, He gives you provision. You will not just go somewhere without having any provision from God. When God gives you vision, the vision, it will be linked with pastors. That's why nowadays we show pastors or prophets, they're coming from nowhere. And you will see that they have problems with their pastors because someone just sleep and wake up and say, God has shown me in a dream, I'm a prophet. He went to become a prophet. Then he has problem with the pastor. He wants to even overcome his own pastor because he thinks he's a pastor or he's a prophet. He will leave the church thinking that he's already blessed, going to another place. When you don't have a blessing of your own father in the house, then, okay, just make it simple. You're staying with your father in the house, you've grown up, and you want to go and do your own family. If your dad did not bless you like my son, I bless you, you can go in peace. Believe me, where you're going, you will not be blessed. Anything you'll be going to do is not going to be blessed because your own father did not bless you. You understand? For you to go in peace, to know that that is a God's calling for you to leave the church, to go and do your own ministry, is when your father blessed you and said, this is your time now to go. And even you yourself, you're in peace. When you're going to do God's ministry. That is when God calls you. But when you're going, you have problem with your own father in the house. And you yourself, you have no peace. Where you're going is not going to be the call of God. It's your own call. So that's what I can say for that.
Praise God. Yeah, as our discussion, I've picked some few things, and most of the discussions we had here and people who came here and communicated, all their discussions are making sense and they're in place. And I won't argue much on that or go back on that, because I agree with most of the points. Now, when we were watching the video, there is a point he brought of why most of the millennials are leaving the church. He talked of people giving a reason of hypocrisy in the church. And that's actually the main, because I've been in the church, okay, I was born in the church. Now, I've seen my friends, people I know, people who were with, even in Bible studies, even in singing in the choir, reaching a time where they leave. And then when I find them outside and I ask, what happened? They be like, your church is full of hypocrites. You know, because of that belief, what does that show? You came to church because of someone, or maybe you're seeing a role model. There is someone which you think, I know Gabi, he preaches, he does, okay, he's supposed to be right. He's supposed to be upright, he's supposed to be pure. He's not supposed to do any mistake. Any mistake from him, I'd be like, this church. This church. Then you leave. Now you're leaving God because you're looking at someone specific. But then he said here that it's not valid. That reason is not valid. When someone leaves a church because of that reason, that is not a good reason. Because he said that a church is for people like that anyway. Not everyone in the church is pure. Not everyone in the church has the knowledge of Christ. Not everyone in the church is filled. They say our body don't agree with the spirit. The body does its own things, the spirit does its own things. It's only when you're more of the spirit that you can take control of the body. But if you're less of the spirit, your body will lead you into something, and then people will be like, this church. You find there are many pastors, their stories will come. Be like, this pastor is eyeing over which girl. This pastor, I've seen this pastor somewhere. You see that church is not good. Now you find people leaving the church because of a pastor, which is not right. That point is not valid. Someone should not leave a church because of that thing. You came to church for God. And then the other thing is, he also gave a question, how do we, leaders in the church, maintain or keep the youth inside the church? Because there are people, not all of us are strong. There are people who are struggling. Okay, the body can take over of the spirit, make you weak in prayers, make you weak in that. You're trying your level best. But then you find something will catch you in your weakest point, and then you decide to listen to your body instead. But then how do we keep people in the church? We have to have these gatherings which we are having already, which is good. But then there are some questions that youth usually have that are not answered by our own leaders. You find in the life today, there are a lot of things that are happening that you need answers to. It can be personal. It can be personal. In your own personal life, how you lead your life, how you live your love life, how you live your sexual life. You remember he said in the Bible, they said, there's no sex before marriage, right? This is what we know, and this is how we're supposed to follow. But does everyone agree with that?
They normalize.
Is everyone using that?
They normalize.
People are trying to normalize it now and make it as if it's okay. You understand? But then how do we try to answer all those questions? Some of the questions cannot be really related to Bible, but it can be social. So those gatherings, bringing people who are well versed in understanding social life to talk to you, it's also okay, which I say could be beneficial to the youth. So thank you.
So much.
And then there's the other point of having preaching what's with no substance. Okay, I don't know how that point will make a reach. You're preaching, but then you're more of a comedian than a preacher. You try to put everything as comedy. You're going away completely from the word. You're not hitting the nail. What should I say? You're not hitting the nail on the head. You understand? You're trying to dodge the main words. People need to hear it. Preach the Bible the way it is and try to be straightforward to a point. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you very much. As they said, I'm going to conclude. Let's stand up, guys. Now we are starting with